Welcome to Sports Pulse here on 88.3 FM The Sting and here on BWTV. I'm your host, Jake Malensek, joined today by Matthias and Andujar. Matthias, thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to talk about sports today.
Always glad to have you on the show, Matthias, and perfect person to have because we did the basketball game yesterday together, women's basketball against Ohio Northern. We'll start with our quick outs and start with the women's basketball game that we saw yesterday out in Earthsprung Gymnasium, a 58-41 win for the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, and it was a complete rout after the end of the third quarter. It was a really close game, and then in the third quarter, BW only allowed 5 points from Ohio Northern, while they scored 20 by their own team. They were led by Megan Hansel and Lily Edwards, who both had 15 points, and also they had five people with 5 points, including that. Megan Scheibelhut was just, we said it a lot on the call, but she got her 50th career block last night while having 5 blocks last night's game.
Yeah, a ridiculous statistical output from Scheibelhut on the defensive side. Now, she only had 2 points, but 2 points, 5 blocks, and 7 rebounds is a pretty typical line for Megan Scheibelhut. She's a phenomenal defender, and she was a key contributor in this game, and the reason why this Yellow Jacket team only gave up 41 points and only 15 in the second half. The other reason for that is because Ohio Northern leading scorer Alyssa Staller only played 13 minutes in this game. She only took 5 shots. Now, she made 3 of them, but she had just 6 points and 3 rebounds. I don't know if we missed an injury or something to Staller in this game, but that was kind of the key there. The leading scorer for the other team doesn't play that much. You're probably in good shape.
I don't know either, because her and Bryn, they both had 6 points by halftime, and at the end of the game, they still only had 6 points. So I don't know if that was a coach's decision or a lingering injury that we didn't get a report on that had them sit out for the rest of the game.
I kept wanting to see Alyssa Staller take the game over, and she ended up only playing 13 minutes, and it felt to me, and watching the game, I don't know how it felt listening, but Staller just didn't feel like she was on the court ever. I feel like every time we were calling this game, and she was playing center in this game, I felt like between Brooke Allen and Grace Dean and Kristen Luersman, they were playing and manning the middle a lot more than Staller was, and I think that was a big key in this game. Staller started this game but only got 13 minutes, and Brooke Allen, the backup center, also had 13. So it felt like whatever Ohio Northern's strategy was, maybe she was injured, definitely hurt them a lot to not have their leading scorer step up.
Yeah, especially in the second quarter where it did look like that Staller was finally going to find the groove. She started scoring on back-to-back possessions, doing that one-legged Dirk fadeaway that we all know and love to see. But yeah, after her third made shot, she just didn't really take command with the ball. And then Lily Edwards on the other side, she had 4 of her shots blocked, but she was still demanding the ball, commanding double teams, and just being really aggressive.
Yeah, Lily was the physical presence that she always was. The team stats in this game were interesting because Ohio Northern shot 8% from the three-point line and just 34% from the field, while the Jackets were able to shoot 33% from the three-point line and 35% from the field. Megan Hensel, a big part of that. She hit 4 of 4 three-pointers, so a good output there from Megan, but just a dominant performance all around from the Jackets. They now sit 15th in the nation. We'll see if they move up in the next rankings. We'll talk about that as we see the rankings come out. We'll get you an update on where the Jackets sit, but continue to be nationally ranked and continue to prove why they should be nationally ranked.
Yeah, just like you said, continuing to show why they're nationally ranked. They are 10-2 of the season, and definitely in the OAC, a very tough conference. We always say that it is. They're 7-0 in that conference, and if that's not a statement, then I don't know what is.
Now, they have not played John Carroll yet, I don't believe, and that's going to be the toughest game on their schedule. They already beat Mount, though, who's a good team, or is supposed to be a good team. They beat Ohio Northern, who's a good team. That John Carroll game is going to say a lot for this women's team going forward. We know the schedule, or we know that there's a tough conference. They're going to be at John Carroll out in University Heights on Wednesday the 19th, and then they play them at home the last week of the season. So those are going to be the 2 biggest tests for the Jackets on their schedule. Probably their hardest game next week on the 19th of January in John Carroll at Mike Moran Court. We'll definitely try and get you that one because I think it's going to be the most interesting game of the season. I don't know if we'll have the men's game that week or the women's game that week. We'll have to see, but hopefully we can get out to University Heights and try and call the John Carroll BW game, because that's going to be a huge one for the women's team. On the men's side of things, the Jackets took care of business last night out in Ada, 92-65, led by a 19-point outing from Drew Wennis, 4 of 6 from 3, 5 of 9 from the field. Wennis would also add 4 rebounds, an assist, and a steal. And Matthias, you brought it up to me. The Jackets had 16 steals in this game as a team.
Yes, and that defensive pressure was really what gave BW the lead overall in that game. Just what you said, Drew Wennis had 19 points and 4 rebounds, but across the board, I was looking at the stats before coming in here, and it was just 1 steal, 4 steals, 1 steal, 2 steals. Like, the defensive pressure, I don't know if it was a coaching decision, like they did full court press, or the players are actually finally jumping the passing lanes. But if they continue to do that, this 2-game win streak could blow up to something even bigger.
Yeah, Samson Albert himself had 4 of the 16, but you go through this box score, all 5 starters had at least 1, 2 of the starters had 2, and then 5 bench players collected a steal. So a huge game there. They had 5 blocks as a team, 3 more from Christian Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer also had 11 points and 7 rebounds, continuing to improve on his role, the young sophomore. And then 12 from Snyder, 11 from Mazzeo, a 4-assist day from Shane Zalba. This team's starting to take shape a little bit. We're starting to see who the best players are, and I think the guys are really falling into their roles. I think Pfeiffer's starting to understand his responsibilities. I think Mazzeo is starting to understand he doesn't have to take all the shots anymore because he's got guys around him that can help him out.
Yeah, especially starting in the season where he shot to score 25 points per game within the first 2 games. He dropped like a 45-point bomb very first game of the season.
He was actually the nation's leading scorer through a week.
Yeah, and now last game he scored around 10?
He had 11.
He had 11, and it's just like it's like the situation in Washington earlier in the season. Instead of Bradley Beal just exploding for 30 points a game, it's just everybody contributing. Even though it makes your numbers look worse, everybody else's numbers go up for the betterment of the team.
And you're winning, and I think that's the big key here. And that's good on Mazzeo. He's a junior, so he's had some time to grow, and I think finally was able to settle in for him like, we got a good team. We're not young anymore. We're a bunch of veterans. We can all, and it's not just Mazzeo. There was games where Jake Snyder was trying to do the takeover mode, or games where Drew Wennis would do it. Now they're pretty equal. Pfeiffer had 8, Snyder 6, 9 shots for Mazzeo, 9 shots for Wennis, and 7 shots for Luke Driscoll. They're finally spreading that basketball around and realizing that they can trust their teammates. I know they're all close-knit. I know they're all good friends, and they're finally starting to realize that they have something potentially special if they can spread this basketball around.
Yeah, and once again, they're only 8-4 on the season right now, but if they keep figuring it out later and later, this 2-game win streak can be something more. I could see them becoming 10-0 by the end of these next couple games.
Yeah, they're going to go to Capital next week in a game that you probably have to win. Those Capital teams, they can surprise you, but I think the Jackets are going to go into this team, both men and women, next week or on Saturday, as the better team out in Capital. So you have to take advantage of that one and go get the win and bring yourself to 9-4, because that would be huge for the standings. Before we exit the quick outs, we want to talk about the MLB a little bit. We haven't done that a lot, and that's mostly, Matthias, because there isn't a lot to talk about. The MLB, as we all know, still in their lockout, and it doesn't look like things are getting any better on the MLB front. Things are not good. The players and the owners cannot agree. We've got top-tier free agent names still sitting out there. The likes of Carlos Correa, the likes of Trevor Story, still unsigned and won't be signed because the teams aren't negotiating with the players right now, and things are not looking good. I asked the simple question, is the season going to start on time? And you had a pretty simple answer.
Yeah, probably not. Just there's so, like, I'm reading through what each side is proposed, and it's literally in contrast of each other, and it looks like that neither side is going for a compromise at this stage of the game. So we might have a late baseball season this year.
Yeah, spring training is only about a month away. Starts in mid to early February sometimes, and so the teams are not going to be able to report to the spring if things aren't better. And you also have to remember, there are guys out there that are sitting at their houses right now waiting to get a call, but they can't get a call because the games are in lockout. So if you're one of those free agents right now, you kind of just have to wait it out, and you might not get to play baseball again until early to late March if things don't get better, and that's going to suck for a guy who, especially a guy like Carlos Correa, who's one of the MLB's best players, one of the former fan favorites before the Astro scandal, was formerly one of the most popular players in the NBA, and this guy's sitting at home right now because nobody signed him. And nobody might not be able to sign him for a while. So that's kind of tough for the MLB. We move on to the NBA here, as good things are happening in the NBA. We're not seeing any lockouts. They had a little bit of trouble with COVID earlier in the year in the NBA, but they're sorting that out. Things are getting a lot better. A lot of guys got 10-day contracts, but a lot of guys are coming back now. Our team, the Cavaliers, is healthy now from all of their COVID issues. Garland back, Mobley back, Jared Allen's back, and they just had another big win. Now, they did beat a team that's rattled, that's been a little bit ravaged by COVID the other night by 20 in Utah, but big win for the Cavs last night, Matthias, against the Utah Jazz, 111-91. Yeah,
and along with that, this team is showing their depth right now. Even when they had players that had 10-day contracts, it was a blessing in disguise because I forgot his name off the top of my head, but one of the players used to play with JB Bickerstaff over with the Memphis G League team. And once JB Bickerstaff got his job and he got the guy that got the 10-day contract, they just immediately started talking, ran the same plays that they were playing in the G League, and it was just a perfect fit, and the Cavs got that win that game. And along with this game, it's just the Cavs are the 6th seed right now, and they are one win behind the 5th seeded Philadelphia 76ers, who the Sixers have one less win, but one less loss as well. So as long as we keep winning our games and Philly messes up just once, we're in that 5th seed, and we don't even need to worry about a play-in.
And that player in reference there was Brandon Goodwin, who played for the Memphis Hustle in 2018, which J.B. Bickerstaff was the coach of. And you mentioned Brandon Goodwin. I don't know how much you've watched of him on the court, but every time I've seen him play on a Cavaliers jersey, he hasn't looked bad. He had 16 minutes against the Jazz, a couple of points in there, a couple of assists, a couple of rebounds. He's looked pretty good. And so I think it's, you mentioned it well, a blessing in disguise for some of these guys and for some of these teams because they find players they might not have had before that could be solid contributors. I think Brandon Goodwin's one of those guys. Now, they unfortunately had to let Taco Fall go to bring him in, but if Brandon Goodwin's going to produce, I'm all for keeping him around on this team.
Yeah, the chips just didn't fall his way, but with things falling our way, Rajon Rondo joining the Cavs, and that has been a good trade ending up for the Cavs because with Ricky Rubio going down, Rajon Rondo has filled the role as a pace setter and a key facilitator for that Cavs secondary. When Darius Garland goes on a bench, you still need that high energy point guard, and Rondo has definitely been that guy for the Cavs so far.
And unfortunately missed the Jazz game due to injury, but should be fine to come back in the Cavs' next game against San Antonio on Friday. Another storyline from this game, there's actually two more that I want to touch on. The first is, we talk about him every week. Let's keep talking about him. Darius Garland, hopefully an NBA All-Star this year. He had 11 points, 15 assists, 10 rebounds.
Vote.
Yeah, please go vote for Garland. Go retweet all the Cavs tweets about it. We need to get him in the All-Star game. First career triple-double, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 15 assists. A crazy game from Darius Garland.
Yeah, and I love triple-doubles like these because it's not the Russell Westbrook 30-point, 10 and 10. It's only 11 points, it's 10 rebounds for a point guard, and 15 assists. So he was facilitating his starting men, and it's not that hard to do if you have players like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and Lauri Markkanen that have just been balling out this season. And yeah, this is just a really good thing to see, especially against a team like Utah, injured or not. Donovan Mitchell is going to get his numbers, and yeah, it's just a really good thing to see. First career triple-double for Darius Garland, and I hope he still continues to grow as he has this season.
Yeah, and another guy, Evan Mobley, he had 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists. So just a couple assists away from a triple-double for him. And the guy that I put on this sheet here, Lauri Markkanen, maybe a guy that flew under the radar when the Cavs acquired him earlier this season. I didn't know what to expect from him He had 20 points and 6 rebounds in this game, and Lowry's had a really nice season. He's averaging 13.5 points per game and 5.3 rebounds per game, but in the last 2, 15 and 5, and then 20 and 6. Lauri Markkanen's been a pretty nice addition to this Cavs team. His defense has also been better than I expected, so a lot of good things going on for Lauri Markkanen, Matthias.
Yeah, and he's doing it on 42%, 32%, and 86% splits for the season, which is really good for a power forward. Like you said, he has been doing well on the defensive end and shooting, which you get Lauri Markkanen, he was projected to be as a Dirk Nowitzki type player, and he hasn't panned out to that in Chicago, but now he's being a role player that the Cavs needed to spread the floor because we have Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley in the paint. So, and he's still 7'1" either way.
And he's playing small forward on this team at 7'1", so that might be the advantage.
And he's still been keeping up with the faster forwards, and his interior defense, he averages a half a block or 0.7 of a block and a half a steal per game, and his rebounding has been really good for this team as well.
He's been a bright spot in the Cavaliers season so far. The whole Cavaliers team, I think, has been a bright spot because we just didn't expect them to be this good. Lamar Stevens had 23 points. I mean, just everybody on this team seems to be contributing, which begs the question, how good is this Cavs team? Because we talked about it at the beginning of the year. You were a little bit skeptical specifically. I remember you being well, this happens every year. Is this real kind of guy? And I think we all kind of had that thought in the back of our minds. Is this Cavs team different? Like this one feels real. How good are they?
I still feel a bit apprehensive, but they are still fighting for that 5th seed. If they could secure that 5th seed, then I have full belief. Well, not full belief in them, but I will have more belief than I have now. This is kind of reminding me of last year's New York Knicks, which I really do not want the Cavs to end up like last year's New York Knicks, not a first-round exit. I would like to go to the playoffs either way, but for the Knicks to have this bad year now, I don't want us to get our hopes up this year and then next year just everything falls apart. So I am holding out hope, but at the same time, I do want to believe in this team.
It's hard not to, but it is also hard to buy in when you look at how bad the Cavs have been in the past couple of years. And you look at what a team like the Knicks and the Hawks did this year. The Knicks and the Hawks were teams that weren't expected to make the playoffs last year, had an up year, and are now having down years. The Knicks are the 11th seed, and the Hawks are the 12th seed. So it'll be interesting to see if these Cavs are just a mirage or if they are really good. To me, our situation feels a little bit different. I think we're such a young team that's good. We're only going to get better next year when you consider Mobley's going to be in year 2. Garland's going to be in year 4, I believe. Jarrett Allen's going to get another year under his belt. So we'll see. I think there's reason to be apprehensive, but I also think there's reason to be really excited about where these Cavaliers are going.
I think it's also weird because every time we're like, oh, is this the real deal? Is this the time that the Cavs are going to be good? Every year we say this without LeBron, it's not true. And this is going to be the first time, at least in my lifetime, because LeBron was drafted 1 year after I was born, that the Cavs are being good while LeBron is not there. And if that's not a crazy stat for LeBron, it's at least a crazy stat for the Cavs organization.
Yeah, every year. And I was born in 2001, and LeBron was drafted in 2003. So we have not seen this Cavaliers team have anything like this without LeBron James. We've seen how many number 1 picks overall? I mean, we drafted Kyrie Irving number 1. Anthony Bennett number 1. Andrew
Tristan
Wiggins
Thompson number
1.
4.
The point here is the Cavaliers were awful, and they were having multiple lottery picks. Colin Sexton in the lottery. Isaac Okoro in the lottery. Darius Garland in the lottery. They've been in the lottery. They've been not that good for a long time. Even if they make the play-in tournament, I think it's a step forward, and we can say, okay, this team can succeed without LeBron James. And this is the most success I've ever seen them have without King James helping us out. The rest of the NBA is pretty interesting as well. The Phoenix Suns still sit atop the NBA with a 31-9 record. The Bulls still lead the Eastern Conference despite their loss to the Nets the other night. But there are a ton of really good teams in the NBA. We'll start by just going around the NBA. Eastern Conference top 5 is Bulls, Nets, Heat, Bucks, and 76ers. And out in the Western Conference, it's the Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies, Jazz, and the Dallas Mavericks, who have kind of had a little bit of a surge lately up into the 5 seed. Matthias, how much is this going to stand here in this standings-wise? Do you think any teams are going to rise, any teams are going to fall, or what's going to change here as this season heads towards the All-Star break and the trade deadline?
You know what? I'm feeling bold today. I think the Grizzlies are going to rise. The Grizzlies are already the 3rd seed, 29-14. They went on that crazy win streak when Ja Morant was out, and now he's back, and they're on a 10-game win streak right now. Only 1 game behind the Warriors and 2 games behind the Phoenix Suns, and there's just nothing stopping this team right now if they're at full force. And at this point, I don't believe Dillon Brooks is on the team right now for injury, but if he is, Dillon Brooks last season put this team. Yes, he is playing, but Dillon Brooks put this team that was 24th ranked in defense to a top 10. I'm not saying by himself, but practically he locks down your best player or your favorite player. We saw that in the play-in when DeMar DeRozan couldn't score, and then Stephen Curry couldn't score, and then even Donovan Mitchell had troubles with Dillon Brooks. This guy is just a lockdown defender. Desmond Bane has been stepping up. Ja Morant. Some people are saying that he's the MVP this year. I can't see it because there's so many good players this year, but
maybe most improved player, but maybe not MVP.
Or maybe Darius Garland, most improved.
I'm good for that, too. Put him in the All-Star game. What are we doing?
Please. Derrick Rose has more votes than him, and I love Derrick Rose, but no.
This is not 2011. We're not. In 2011, Derrick Rose deserved those votes, while Darius Garland was in,
Anyways,
preschool.
what team do you think is going to rise, Jake, or fall?
I believe the Milwaukee Bucks are going to rise. I know it's kind of an easy answer, and it might be a cop-out answer, but it makes sense. They're 4th in the East right now. This is the defending NBA champions, the defending Eastern Conference champions. They're not the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference. I don't believe that, and I don't think anybody should believe that. They've struggled with some injuries this year. They're not quite as full force yet. I think when they get there, they're going to be probably rise here. Now, they're only 3 games out of 1st, and they're only a game and a half out of 2nd. And so I think the Milwaukee Bucks, down the stretch here, Giannis takes over. They understand their assignment. And they go out and start winning some games, start to beat the teams in front of them, the Heat, the Nets, the Bulls. I think this Milwaukee Bucks team is the best team in the East still. Maybe you could give the argument to the Nets, but it's hard to not say Milwaukee's the best team when they just won the championship. They're going to rise from 4th place.
Yeah, and I would say for sake of matchup, the Cavs are the 6th seed and the Bucks are the 4th seed. If, for sake of argument, the Bucks stay the 4th seed and the Cavs could rise to the 5th seed, exclusively for a mismatch, I believe that the Cavs would have a really good shot of taking them out in 7 because we have bodies like Lauri Markkanen, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. And
you want to throw somebody at Giannis, you throw Evan Mobley at Giannis.
Yes. You want to throw somebody, you throw everybody. That's the point. That's where you got to be with
Giannis. You build a wall of 7-footers and tell them good luck. And if he beats your 7-footers, then what else are you going to do? You tried your best.
But for sake of matchup, if Chris Middleton decides to not be Michael Jordan but be Chris Middleton because he has his series where he decides to be the best player and he has a series where he decides to just miss every shot. I don't get it. But if Chris Middleton has a bad series and if Drew Holiday has an average series, then I think that we do have a chance against the Bucks. It would have to be a grueling 7-game series and it would be in Milwaukee's home stadium for that 7th game, but I still think the Cavs would have a chance.
The Cavs are going to be that team, similar to a team we'll talk about later in the San Francisco 49ers in the NFL. They're a team you don't want to run into in the playoffs. They might not beat you, but they're going to wear you down, they're going to tire you out, and they're going to give you everything they have. I know J.B. Bickerstaff, if he gets this team in a playoff series, is going to have them ready to go. And I know that nobody's going to outwork the Cavaliers. Now, that's probably because they're young, and they're younger than everybody else, so they still have that energy, and they still have that ferocity, but I don't think anybody outworks the Cavaliers in these playoffs, and they're going to be a team that if you run into them in the first round, you better bring your A game because they're probably going to take you to 5 or 6 before you even know it.
Yeah, and I think that's just the biggest thing for these playoffs overall. Even right now, the 3-seeded Heat versus 6-seeded Cavs, Bam has 3 7-footers to go up against, in which Bam, yes, is a tremendous player, but that's a lot of bodies and a lot of energy to exert. Jimmy Butler's best game is when he drives in the paint and then kicks out. If you drive in against 2 7-footers, there's no reason to close out on him because there's already 2 7-footers there waiting for him. And it's just, I don't know. once again, I'm really interested in this Cavs team. I want to believe in them, but something is just telling me to hold out hope. I blame LeBron James.
Ton of basketball left to play. Only 40 games into the season at this point, so we still have about 40 to go. We'll see how these teams pan out. Any team here that you think is going to fall off? If I had to guess, I'd say the Chicago Bulls. Now, I don't think they fall too far, but I don't think they finish the regular season as the Eastern Conference #1 team.
I agree, but I think a team that is going to fall is I don't even know. This is tough because, once again, the league is so good now.
There's a lot of talent everywhere.
There's just I can't even say a low-hanging fruit like the Toronto Raptors that they're going to fall because Scotty Barnes has been on the rise. I don't know what how Pascal has been playing, but Fred VanVleet, also an all-star candidate. You can vote for him. He's been doing great, but Fred VanVleet has been doing amazing, and people just don't talk about him because he's on the Raptors. I would say the 76ers for now because Tyrese Maxey, he has had a hot streak lately, taking main point guard control over for Ben Simmons. And if they're looking to trade away Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, they might not get that piece that they want back because at this point they're just panicking to get rid of Ben Simmons. And I think that might make them fall. Or even though they're already the 10th seed, I could say the Portland Trail Blazers because Damian Lillard, he is undergoing surgery as of yesterday, and that is taking him out for 6 to 10 weeks, which make them fall even lower than they already are.
And they're in the play-in tournament right now, so falling out of the 10 seed would knock them out of the play-in tournament. Let's get to the big trade that happened. I believe it was earlier today, if I don't have my time confused. Cam Reddish traded to the New York Knicks for Kevin Knox and a pick. Now, I've been hearing a lot, and I've been hearing that this is a really good trade if you're a Knicks fan, not so much of a good trade if you're a Hawk fan. So I'll ask you, Matthias, where do you stand on this trade? What does Cam Reddish bring to the New York Knicks?
Cam Reddish brings to the New York Knicks that Stephen A. Smith would love this, the old school New York Knicks mentality of grinding it out, a grit and grind Grizzlies player. He's going to give you good defense. He's always going to play his heart out there. In the playoffs, he saved even though Trae Young and Clint Capella did amazing against the 76ers, there was games where Cam Reddish, I believe just like 2 games out of the series, where he would just, whoever he was guarding, he was not letting score, and he had a solid 10, 15-point game in the semifinals against the 1 seed, and he's young. And that's what the Knicks needed, and that's what they got. And on the other side, the Hawks have fallen off. I don't know why they traded away Cam Reddish, but at the same time, you do get a pick, and you do get Kevin Knox, which he is still a young player, which is kind of weird to say because he was drafted a couple years ago. But he still has time. He still has time to grow. If the training staff and the developmental staff could just unlock that potential for him, I feel like this would be an even trade at best.
Yeah, the crazy thing about Kevin Knox, he was drafted in 2018, but is still only 22 years old. August 11th, 1999 is his birthday. So he's still only 22 years old. Still a ton of potential there. We saw it at Kentucky. He was the 9th overall pick in the draft. Anybody who's a lottery pick has some sort of untapped potential in there. I think you're right. If the Hawks can get a little bit or just enough out of Kevin Knox, plus they're going to have the Knicks pick this year, there's a chance this trade evens out. But I really like Cam Reddish, probably the forgotten player from his draft class. You talk about Zion, you talk about Ncaa, you talk about RJ Barrett. He's kind of that forgotten player. He was a higher-ranked recruit than Zion Williamson. And a lot of people had him pegged as potentially to be a better player than Zion Williamson. And so,
I mean, he's at least playing.
And I was going to say, he's at least on the court right now. So there's the point that you never know what you're going to get from some of these guys, and Cam Reddish, I think, has been really underrated for a lot of his career. The last thing we'll talk about here in the NBA before we move on, Kyrie Irving's return. It's been interesting. Brooklyn's government has been a lot more lenient because they want their superstar to play. but also I don't think the Nets want him anymore. So it's kind of just been, all in all, a weird return for Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, it's weird, and even though I have in my notes, even though it's for away games, Kyrie does give the Nets a morale boost because at least they're able to play at quote unquote full strength at the moment. But before even Kyrie left, or before he even came back, the Nets were struggling at home. But now you have the difference of away in a playoff series. You have Kyrie Irving, perennial all-star, which first of all, he's only played 3 games.
He's like third.
And he's like third in all-star voting.
Different story. But yeah.
Different story. And then
that's a whole nother show for us to just talk about how bad it is.
But Kyrie Irving, an amazing player. And then when you go home, you have Patty Mills. Nothing against Patty Mills. He's been doing amazing this season, but that's a huge drop-off between Patty Mills and Kyrie Irving. And if you're the Nets, I've heard recently that the Nets were in talks that now Kyrie can play at home, but every time he does, it's going to be a small fine, which, knowing the fine, it's more than my tuition. But it's
big to us, but it's small to them.
But it's still a way for Kyrie Irving to play the full rest of the season. But if he doesn't, that's just going to be a huge amplification of, okay, as long as we play the Nets at their house, we don't need to deal with them at full strength. And that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Kyrie Irving saga pans out because he's probably going to end up playing at home by the end of the season, regardless. The Nets are going to pay the fine, or they're going to have Kyrie pay the fine, or they're going to swindle some way to pay that fine to get Kyrie Irving on the court. That is if they don't trade him. Because we've heard the rumors that he's going to get traded. The Cavaliers a couple weeks ago had the highest odds to land Kyrie Irving in a trade. So we have no idea what's going on with Kyrie Irving, but an interesting return. He complained yesterday about Nasir Little diving on the ball. He thought it was a dangerous play. He's an interesting guy, and his return is interesting, unsurprisingly, but he's a talented basketball player, and he makes the Brooklyn Nets a better team. And we'll just have to see if he makes them a better team at home, too, this year. I have no idea how that's going to pan out. I'm excited to see the rest of this basketball season pan out because there's a lot of basketball left to be played in the NBA, and we're excited to continue to bring you coverage of that here on Sports Pulse. We'll move on now to the NCAA. Not a lot to talk about here, but the national championship was on Monday, the final game of the season. The Georgia Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide, and Georgia pulled it out 33-18 in what was a really, really boring game for 3 quarters. A lot of defense. Nothing happened. At halftime, it was 9-6.
I'm glad we take different notes because you say boring, I say that championship game was a tough, grinded-out defensive affair.
Which is fine. That's just boring to a lot of people. And as much as I'm a huge fan of watching defensive players play, this is supposed to be the best game of the year, and we get 9-6 at halftime. And then Georgia dominating Alabama in the fourth quarter and beating them 33-18.
Yeah, but along with what I said earlier, both offenses kind of took a back seat in the game and let their defensive take them to where they needed to go. There was an unfortunate injury on the Alabama offense. I forgot the receiver's name. Jamison Williams, and that played a huge part in the game, but I don't think it played as much of a part as people have said.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Georgia needed it most, their defensive stars shined the brightest, and they literally carried them to the victory over Alabama with that last second pick six, which just sealed the game.
And you talk about Jamison going down. I do agree with you. I don't think it was that big of a deal. We have to remember that Bryce Young threw 2 interceptions in this game. He was 35 of 57. Alabama did not run the football well. Starting running back Brian Robinson averaged just 3.1 yards a carry, and backup running back Trey Sanders averaged 2.5 yards per carry. Bryce Young got sacked a ton. This defense for Georgia they were just really good. Whether Jamison Williams was out there or not, they were going to play really good. They were the best defense in the nation. They're a defense that I think is going to have almost 11 players get drafted into the NFL draft. I think that's how talented their team is. And so I think we should have expected this defensive performance. I think we got it. Quay Walker, probably one of my favorite players in college football this year, 7 tackles for him. Channing Tindall had a nice day. Nakobe Dean had a nice day. Trayvon Walker had a sack. Robert Beal had a sack. Just tons of sacks for this team. They were just dominating Alabama the whole game. And if Jameson plays, maybe Alabama can hang, but when your quarterback throws 2 picks and doesn't look that good, it's tough to win the game.
Yeah, it definitely is. And just like you said, Alabama could do nothing much against that Georgia defense. And then when they finally do something, Georgia immediately responds. And I think that was the difference between the first game that it was Alabama versus Georgia and the second game that was Alabama versus Georgia. Because Georgia, that second drive where Georgia scored the ball right after Alabama scored, that was we are done losing. We are done being number 2. We were number 1 in the nation for the entirety of the year, except for that game, and we're going to show you why we were.
Yeah, and they came out and they proved a lot of people wrong. Now, they actually were favored in this game, which surprised me. I thought Alabama going in was the better team, but the team that, people picked to win the game was the Georgia Bulldogs. So they must have known something that I didn't, because I thought Alabama was the more talented team, but I forget, I guess, that Georgia defense is so good. And if you need defensive players this year, pick somebody who played for the Georgia Bulldogs, because you're bound to get somebody good. Everybody in a red jersey looked really, really good on the defensive side of the ball. So if you need a defensive player, get one from Georgia in the NFL draft. We'll talk a ton about the NFL draft. Can't wait to talk about some of those Georgia defenders. Jordan Davis is so good. Nakobe Dean is so good. Every level of the ball, that team was so good, and they're clearly the best team in the nation, and now they get to prove they're the best team in the nation by defending their title next year. And it'll be fun to see the Georgia Bulldogs try and do that. Now, they're going to lose a lot. They're going to lose probably 8 to 9 starters, maybe 10 starters on their defense. We'll see if they can respond. The new AP poll came out, the final end of the season one, and Georgia was not number 1, and they were not number 2. So I think that says a lot when you consider what people know that the Bulldogs are going to lose next year. Alabama came in at 1, and Ohio State came in at 2. So going to be tough entitled defense for the Bulldogs next year.
Yeah, and on top of that, just going through the finalities of this year, with Georgia being the favorites, from what I've heard, with people saying that Georgia is the favorite, is because they lost to the Crimson Tide, they have that bigger chip on their shoulder of, okay, you beat us, you're not going to beat us again. And that was the reason why, that's at least in my opinion, why they were number 1. Kirby Smart finally being one of the only assistant coaches that was from Alabama to beat Nick Saban. It was just a storybook ending for those Bulldogs, and I congratulate them because it was a grinded out game, and they definitely deserved that win.
And they had a lot to play for, and they came out and played hard and played for all of those things they had to play for, and it panned out. And I, too, congratulate the Georgia Bulldogs on their big win. And it's nice to see Alabama lose. I'm all for the Crimson Tide losing a football game. Now, I wasn't necessarily going to root for Georgia, but it's always good to root against Alabama. So we'll take the Crimson Tide losing there and the Bulldogs getting the win. The biggest thing to talk about here, Matthias, the NFL.
Yes.
Week 18 recap. Tons happened. The playoffs are coming up. We had the best game. We had great games. We got the playoffs. Where do you want to start? Week 18?
I want to start with the craziest weekend of the season, with my Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Baltimore Ravens 13-18 in overtime, and T.J. Watt, while only playing 14 games this season, to everybody that says he got that record because of the extended season, he only played 14 games. And in 14 games, he tied the Michael Strahan record for sacks in the single season with 22.5 sacks.
That's impressive.
Give that man his flowers. He did amazing this season. DPOY.
He might need about 6 to beat the Chiefs.
The Chiefs place. This is a later topic, but a synopsis is the Chiefs play so well in getting the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands so fast that T.J. Watt can't blitz fast enough.
Yeah.
He could not possibly blitz as fast as, full sprint, he cannot get to Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes already gives it to Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one out in Kansas City this week, but we'll talk about that when we get there because the Steelers made the postseason and everybody is, well, there are people that are happy about it. Maybe people on that side of the table that are happy about it.
8% chance of making it.
Yeah.
8%.
Yeah.
According to, I was going to say Daily Bugle, according to New York Times.
But they did it. So I guess I'm not even going to say congratulations because I'm not a nice enough person to say that. Some other big games in the NFL. The reason the Steelers are in the playoffs, well, there's two reasons. One is because the Indianapolis Colts have not won a football game in Jacksonville since 2014.
Where Andrew Luck was not injured.
That has continued. Andrew Luck was the last quarterback to win a Jacksonville Jaguars game in Jacksonville for the Colts.
Other than me needing the Colts to lose, I felt so bad because Jonathan Taylor this entire season has been my MVP candidate, and where the game that he needed everything to go well the most, it just fell apart.
It did. My Indianapolis Colts.
I'm sorry.
Apart. It's okay.
You won't say congratulations, but I'll say I'm sorry.
Well, you don't hate. You have reason to be excited, and I don't. So I have nothing went right. Brandon Staley didn't even let me get a tie, so I didn't have to watch the Steelers in the playoffs. Brandon Staley wanted to lose. I don't know why. He's just, oh my Lord.
In his defense, maybe.
See, we don't know.
Because in his defense, he was probably like, okay, they kneeled the ball, they're just running out the clock so they could call a timeout and kick a field goal with like 1 second left. But like, no, they took a knee. And at that point, I would rather take that chance of, if he misses, we're going to get the ball back. I mean, if he misses with 0 seconds left, just that's a tie, oh well. Than just, okay, if he misses this, we have a minute and a half to go down the field and score.
It was...
But he plays very recklessly.
It was an interesting time to call the timeout because of how much time was left on the clock and because Derek Carr had literally just come out and taken a knee. Now, I think you could probably expect that he took the knee just to run the clock out. They didn't want to run a play because they could run a play and turn it over, so they were playing it safe. But why not just take your chances? Why not let the clock run out and see what happens? The Raiders... I think Rich Bisaccia, head coach, said, we thought about it. We really thought about it. Because there's a chance your field goal gets blocked. There's a chance you miss and the guy runs it back. You could still have lost that game if you're the Raiders, and I think they had to consider it. And I think in their minds they considered it. And then the Chargers just gave them 30 free seconds to like
reconsider it.
Reconsider it again. And it was definitely interesting to see the Chargers do that. But a freaking awesome football game on Sunday night between the Raiders and the Chargers.
It was such a stressful game.
I'm sure it was. The one thing you didn't need to happen was a tie, and they almost tied like 4 times.
Yes, it was. With a midnight school night, with having
the first day of classes.
First day of classes. I just got out of a 6:30 to 10:15, and I ran into that. And it was just, oh my gosh, so much. That was the most anxiety-inducing game that I felt that did not involve the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that was just, I mean, I can't complain anymore because the Steelers made it, and I am happy. I felt that since the Colts lost that the Raiders and Chargers were going to go on the field, shake hands, and just kneel for the entire game.
Which they should have.
Which they could have, and they both would have made it. I thought that the Chargers were the better team anyways, and that the Chargers deserved more to make it. But, I mean, the Raiders have stuck out a horrible season off the field, and, like, what Derek Carr said in his Twitter kind of sums it up, but, like, that team just banded together no matter who was there, who wasn't there, and they were just, we're not going to give this up no matter what, and they deserve it even more. Even though I think the Chargers were a better team, the Raiders deserve it. They worked hard for it.
They went through a lot, and arrests, and your coach fired, and more arrests, and just everybody
and somebody
just
getting a DUI after
falling
winning.
apart, and just Derek Carr what a leader that guy became. Like, you kind of knew he had the leadership qualities going into the season, but I think you really saw them shine through. He put the team on his back. He came out, and I think we can agree, go Raiders next week against the Bengals. Nobody wants to see the Bengals do good, so we can all be Raiders fans next week and root against the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that'll be...
Yeah, this isn't a Cincinnati, Ohio State thing. This is...
No, I don't. Wherever the Browns fans are that are rooting for the Bengals, don't come talk to me because I'm not doing any of that. It's go Pack go around here, and that's it.
Out of living in Cleveland my whole life, even though being a Steelers fan, you don't band together even though you're in the same state.
I'll band together for the Bearcats because they're playing Alabama. I'm not gonna band together for the Bengals.
Yeah.
Some other fun games though in this week. Let's move on to those. The Rams and the 49ers, a spectacle on Sunday.
Man, what a game.
49ers needed to go to the playoffs. They needed to win to do it because the Saints had won. So if the Niners lost, they missed. And Jimmy G in probably the most...
Jimmy G fashion.
Not a good stat line, technically, but he was clutch, and he got the job done.
With a broken thumb.
23 of 32, 316, a touchdown, 2 picks, and a game-winning drive. It's probably the most Jimmy G game ever.
And I posted this on my Snapchat. There was just Jerry Jeudy was just unstoppable offensively. Like, we could talk about Deebo Samuel, we could talk about George Kittle, but Jerry Jeudy had just 2 plays that blew the entire game out of the water that you just look back and it was like, okay, the 49ers are winning this game.
You kind of knew they were going in. I think they were kind of like that team. And I mentioned it earlier. They're the team you don't want to play. They're red hot right now. And red hot football teams, specifically late in the year, always seem to find a way to do well. Now, I don't think that they're the best team in the playoffs. I think they're going to beat the Cowboys, but they're going to have to run into the Bucs or the Packers or the Rams again eventually. And I don't think they're going to win there, but boy, they have a chance to win at least the playoff game because they're hot. And they have a lot of talent.
This is kind of sad, but at the same time, I find it so funny that the Cowboys, they're 12-5. They're a hot offensive team. Their defensive side of the ball has been looking great. They're in the playoffs, and everyone's like, the Niners are going to upset them. Like, every single person.
How much do you believe in the Cowboys?
I don't.
Because I've seen Dak Prescott play awful. I've seen him fall apart in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
He ruined my fantasy playoffs. I hope he ruins his own playoffs for doing that. This man was my starting fantasy quarterback. And in the most crunch time of the year, I get 5 and 8 in back-to-back weeks from Dak Prescott.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I had Cooper and Zeke. So Dak doing bad translates bad. I don't like Dak anymore. That's where I'm getting at. So go Niners.
But I just always think it's funny that every year when the Cowboys fans are always like, okay, this is our year, finally, and everyone else in the league is like, you're going to make it to the playoffs at best.
It's never their year. They're eventually going to win a Super Bowl.
Eventually.
I think Dak's good enough to take them there, despite my feelings towards him. But I don't think this is their year.
I felt it from here how much that hurt you saying that.
It was tough. He's good. He's a great quarterback, and I'd love to have him. I wonder what having a good quarterback is like sometimes. A great quarterback is like sometimes.
No, you meant good.
Anything else you want to talk? I have one more comment to make about Week 18 that I thought was fun.
I'll let you go first.
Matthias.
Yes.
We have played Sting football before. So we're very experienced football players. How many times would you run a QB sneak on third down and 9 from your own 5?
None. But since the Giants coach is so not hard-headed, but he's so down pat, everybody wants to play for him because he's that coach who works the hardest, and all the other narratives he makes inside his head. He is
not a coach. He's as much of an NFL coach as me and you right now. So, sorry, Joe Judge.
It's okay because a couple weeks ago when they had Mike Glennon playing, you and I had more passing yards than the New York Giants because they passed for -10 yards.
We had almost as many passing yards as the New York Jets this week, who had 1. So us Sting football players might need to make an NFL jump because we're better than some of these teams, clearly.
Yeah, well versed in our craft.
Yeah. I heard a lot of stories about the QB sneak on 3rd and 9, and Joe Judge is a special teams coach, true and true. So you knew he was going to punt from the 5, and the reason people are giving for the sneak is he wanted to give his punter some more space to punt. So, dude, your team's 4-13. 4-13. I wanted to make sure I was right. Your team is 4-13. You don't even need. Why are you worrying about punting? What do you want to get? Mr. Punter guy, Oh, that's the other team. You want to get Mr. Punter, Riley Dixon? This man punted for 306 yards. When was the last time you had a quarterback go for 306 yards?
That's contract money.
And you're worried about your punter. You passed for 103, and you punted for triple that, essentially. And you're worried about punting the football. You have better things to worry about than punting the football, New York. You should be happy your coach got fired. You should move on. Go get Brian Flores and strive with...
Why did Brian Flores get fired?
Another storyline.
That was my next point. I was going to talk about the Dolphins and Patriots game, how the Dolphins decide every year to beat the Patriots, and they started the season 1-7, and then they just flipped their year around, and they ended 9-8. Just barely lost that last playoff seeding when they lost to the Bills, and Brian Flores has won. I saw a stat the other day that Brian Flores has won more games for them for the past 2 years, more than Adam Gase did their last.
Yeah.
How many?
And not many people can beat Bill Belichick, but one man who can is Brian Flores. They beat him twice this year. This was the first time that the New England Patriots have been swept by the Miami Dolphins in 22 years. 2000 was the last year that the Miami Dolphins swept the New England Patriots, and they said enough with the coach. A coach who, now there was some potential turmoil inside where Flores didn't want Tua, and he was on the Herbert train, and he didn't get along with what GM Chris Greer was saying, but...
He wanted to stick out with Tua Tagovailoa because the dude's only in like his second year, or was only in his second year.
You can't blame Chris Greer for wanting Tua to come back. But Brian Flores didn't agree. The guys won a ton of games. He took a really bad roster in his first season and snuck out like 5-11 on a team that many projected was going to go 0-16. Found 5 wins with that team. Was a Cleveland Browns loss last year away from the playoffs, and was probably a bounce of the football away from going to the playoffs this year at 9-8, and he got fired. I think all of the other coach firings we could say make sense. Mike Zimmer makes sense. Vic Fangio makes sense. Matt Nagy definitely makes sense.
Should have been fired.
Probably should have been fired 5 weeks ago at this point.
When they started going to his son's baseball games and saying fire Matt Nagy.
Gruden and Urban back in the weeks that one makes sense. All of those are fine. But Flores, some teams got to go hire Brian Flores because he's going to make a heck of a coach somewhere.
Okay.
He already is a heck of a coach. We know this.
Minnesota, you guys have a great roster already.
Yeah.
What if you got Brian Flores?
You could project Brian Flores to any vacancy, and he fits. Any single one. As long as you have a good defense, you need Brian Flores as your coach. I love him in Chicago. Get a good offensive... Get Joe Brady with Brian Flores in Chicago. You're riding high. You got nothing to lose. You got your quarterback guru for Justin, and you got your defensive coach. Brian Flores fits anywhere. So consider, if you're an NFL team right now, consider yourself lucky because you got one of the best coaching candidates we've ever seen get fired.
So going on teams that have missed the playoffs, Jake, who is your most disappointing team?
You know the answer to that question.
I just realized how obvious that is. But
I'll give you my the team that I'm second most disappointed in that didn't make the playoffs. That's probably it's between the Indianapolis Colts and the Los Angeles Chargers. Both teams, I think, had talented enough rosters to get there. The Chargers, a team I was really, really high on coming into the season, really loved Justin Herbert, really thought Justin Herbert had a lot to prove, and I think he proved a lot, but really disappointed with the way that their defense performed for most of this season, giving up just bundles of points to a bunch of teams. I think a dark horse answer here is the Minnesota Vikings.
That's my answer.
When you look...
Other than the... Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned how talented their roster is. They have a pretty good defense. They have Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Kirk Cousins. And win 8-9.
And Minnesota fans always blame, from what I've heard, Minnesota fans have blamed this mostly on Kirk Cousins. It was not Kirk Cousins' fault.
Kirk Cousins in the final game of the season was 14 of 22 for 250 and 3 touchdowns. On the season, 4,221 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 7 picks. It's not Kirk Cousins' fault.
And just with that, our final topic. What about the Browns?
They're going to stick with Baker.
Why?
They said they were. I think, give him one more healthy year. Bring in some competition this year. Let him be healthy. If he doesn't play well healthy, then you know. If he plays well healthy, then you know the other way. I think this was a tough season, I think, all around for the Browns. COVID got him. Injuries got him. We'll see what happens next year when they're healthy. I like the idea with sticking with Baker. Unless you're going to get Deshaun Watson, nobody else is going to be better than Baker. Besides maybe Rodgers, Watson, or Russell Wilson are probably all you're going to get that's better. You're not going to draft anybody better. So I think they had to make that choice.
So just for sake of time, I'm just going to say don't stick with Baker. I said this last season to not stick with Baker, and you guys did it anyways, and now you guys are out of the playoffs. And into the offseason...
Last season, it was an awful take.
Into the offseason, look to improve the secondary and resolve the coaching issues between Kevin Stefanski and the rest of the team, because I don't know why Nick Chubb didn't get the ball 30 times every game.
Final parting thoughts for me. Draft Chris Olave at 13, please, and thank you. That's going to wrap up. That's all I got left to say for Sports Pulse. Matthias, final thought.
Watt for MVP. I mean, not MVP, DPOY. Because defensive players don't win MVP.
That's going to wrap us up here on Sports Pulse, here on BWTV, and here on 88.3 FM The Sting. Thank you so much for watching and for listening, and have a great rest of your Thursday.